Okay, we're going to talk about calculating relative risk, and we're given the situation. We'll talk about lung cancer and smokers and non-smokers. So we're going to take a look at this question right here: the relative risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer compared to a non-smoker. So the relative risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer, that's my interest group. All right, and relative risk is all about a ratio. It's a ratio of basically my interest group with a variable like smokers and the acquiring cancer versus some sort of control group. In this case, it's non-smokers, people's not smoking, and their likelihood of getting cancers, because we want to look at the relative risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer, and we're going to want to compare that to some control group. So it's a ratio that we're going to be looking at. Now, first thing we have to do is we need to calculate these two things here. The risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer. It's like a conditional probability, all right? So we're taking a look at a smoker dying of lung cancer. And so we have 7,316 smokers, and 397 of those have died of have developed lung cancer and died of lung cancer. So the risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer, 397 over 7,316. And another way you could say this is what's the probability of if someone is a smoker of dying of lung cancer? So you can turn it into a probability, and you can turn it into a conditional probability if you want. And it's 5.43% if we turn it into a percent. And we'll do the same thing with the risk of a non-smoker dying of lung cancer. So we'll take a look at the non-smokers. So we've got 37 out of 4,651. Again, what's the probability that a non-smoker dying of lung cancer, or given that somebody's a non-smoker, what is the probability that they will die of lung cancer? And this is quite small. It's just 0.8% if we turn it into a percentage. So these two things here we've talked about before can actually calculate. In the terms of risk, these are referred to as absolute risk. The absolute risk for these groups with regards to lung cancer. Okay? So that's how we calculate that. Now we're going to go on to the third part of this, which is where we really want to go. And we want to know what the relative risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer compared to a non-smoker is. Okay, so now that we've developed absolute risk for these two situations, we're going to take a look at relative risk. So again, relative risk is simply a ratio, and we want to find the risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer compared to. So again, the interest group is the smokers dying of lung cancer, and we've just found the absolute risk of that, which is 5.43. It's a percentage, but it's a ratio, so we don't need to worry about the percentage sign. And then compared to a non-smoker, well, the ratio is just 0.8, because we want to compare that, and we're going to work that out. And then we're going to, when we do the division, we get an answer of 6.8. Now, you could turn that into a percentage if you want, 6.8%, but the fact of the matter is that number has a specific, that is the relative risk of a smoker dying of lung cancer. Now, it becomes contextual, and it only has meaning when you actually interpret that 6.8 or 6.8%. You need to interpret it. In relative risk terms, what that means is that since this is positive, that a smoker is 6.8 times more likely to die of lung cancer than a non-smoker. That's what it interprets. So if you get a positive number here when you do this relative risk calculation, it's always going to tell you basically how many times more likely something is to happen based on the variable that you're looking at and so on. In this case, it was dying of lung cancer and being a smoker. And that's relative risk, and that's how you calculate it. So just very quickly, how do we interpret this relative risk? If your relative risk value is 1, it means that the outcome is not influenced by the factor present, so lung cancer is not affected by smoking. Because, I mean, that would mean that we basically have a situation where we have the ratios would have to be the same. So you would have 5 over 5, 5% over 5% or whatever. So it gives you 1. That means that there's no difference between the probabilities and absolute risk. They're the same. If your R value is greater than 1, like what we found, which was 6.8% or 6.8, that tells you there is an effect, and in fact it means that the outcome is greater when the factor is present. So more likely to get lung cancer when smoking, and you're 6.8 times or 7 times more likely to get lung cancer if you're a smoker. And then if you get a ratio, let's say you got 5 over 7 as the absolute, and so that you get something less than 1. When your relative risk is less than 1, it means the outcome is less when the factor is present. So in this case, if you work this out, you would be less likely to get cancer if you smoked. Or conversely, you could simply say that you have a greater risk of getting lung cancer if you're a non-smoker than if you're a smoker. So it doesn't really matter how you say it, but the actual number that comes out is going to be what determines how you would do the interpretation.